I now have the pleasure of welcoming Gemma Sanderson to the stage. Not quite yet, Gemma. I'm going to do a big wrap-up on this. I have to read. I couldn't memorise all of this. So Gemma is the Director of Cooper's Partners Financial Services, heading up their self-managed superannuation fund specialist services. Gemma has over 20 years of experience providing strategic advice on self-managed super funds, estate planning and wealth management to clients, as well as technical support to accounting, legal and financial planning groups. She's a busy girl. In Gemma's role, she advises many women who have been divorced, been widowed, with managing their financial position, providing essential guidance and understanding of the complexity of various taxation structures, advising on the best structures and assets to receive as part of any family law settlement, and appropriate structures for longer-term financial optimisation and the transition of wealth to the next generation. So it's a wonderful support service for women. Gemma's also been involved in various non-profit organisations that provide support to women and families in need, including there's the Lionheart Camp for Kids, which provides grief support to children aged between 5 and 17 and their families where a parent, sibling or close family member has died. There's the Care Winter Appeal, which focuses on providing support for homelessness in WA. And there's the Financial Toolbox, which provides free financial, taxation and Centrelink information focused on assisting women who are encountering financial abuse. So, love to welcome Gemma to the stage. Thank you, Gemma. Hide behind me.
Oh, hide behind here. Yes. Thank you so much for having me. It's always difficult to sort of try and share your story, and following on from, that was phenomenal what people do give back. And so just I'll share a little bit with you about, I guess, my background and why I'm involved in certain other charities. And there's a bit of detail about me there in terms of my role at Cooper Partners. So I've been doing what I do for quite a long time, north of 20 years. I know I don't look that old, but I certainly do feel it when you've got all these young people in the office coming through, and I think, oh my goodness, you weren't even alive when I started doing this role. And so it certainly does, it's very grounding to see that with these young people coming through. And I was very lucky, so I've got up there, country kid, sort of. I grew up in Busselton back, I'm a child of 1980. So I grew up in the country. Both my parents were school teachers, and they really instilled in me the benefit and how important learning and education is. And so even though at the get-go they both said, whatever you do, don't bloody become a teacher, was the quote. Even though they loved what they did, I think that they also saw the other side of things and the challenge that goes with it. So I find that often I am a bit of a glorified teacher in sitting there both teaching others in my industry about how it's very complicated and technical, a lot of what I do, which I love because I'm just a big nerd. So, I'm really passionate about what I do, and I really like to problem solve. And so teaching others how to do that to make sure that everyone gets the right outcome is really important. And then part of that has also been using my skill set as much as I can to help others. And that's how I was really drawn to some of the charitable work that I get involved in. So again, I think I always feel like I was very privileged to be born in the right country where we have free education and all of those other areas that our government provides. And we live in the greatest place. I know everyone's like, oh, the beaches in Sydney are so great. I think the beaches in Sydney are shit. They just, we'll go down to Cot Beach or Scarborough or anywhere, and the beaches we have in WA, don't tell too many people because you don't want them to. Anyway, I feel like I was born in the right place, and I grew up, in Busselton as a quasi-country kid, not on a farm or anything like that, but I really loved that whole lifestyle and that childhood from that perspective. And even though I moved to Perth to go to attend university and lived here from then, I still classify myself as a local whenever I go down to Busselton. But anyway, we digress. So along the way, I've obviously put a big emphasis on education and wanting to learn. And every single day I learn something new, and trying to teach the next generation to come through in the business. And from that technical perspective, there's not a day that doesn't go past when I'm not grabbing my legislation. And I know, again, that sounds pretty nerdy, but the sort of stuff that we do, every time you've got to double check and see what you're doing, and you're always learning. So that skill set, which is very financial based, a friend of mine, she was the founder of Lionheart Camp for Kids. So she was a palliative care social worker at Perth Children's Hospital, and just saying that just is it really breaks your heart in terms of just the role and what she would encounter on a daily basis. And so she saw a need to provide that bereavement support for families. So in WA, there's a lot of support out there for families that have been struck with cancer. And so those charities do a fantastic job where there is a family member who has cancer and they may recover, but they also may not. And so for the parents and the siblings of a child that might die of cancer, there is a lot of support, and that is amazing. And so what works well. Oh, thank you, Shane. Sorry, I should have been a bit more with my instructions.
You grabbed too big here.
Yeah. Lost his focus. So my friend Shelley, in her role, she saw a lot of families that were bereaved because someone died in a car accident, or there was a suicide or a death on site. It didn't matter how someone's died, there's been a death and there should be support for them. And so she was looking at setting up a charity, and she reached out to me and said, "Gemma, can you help?" And I said, "Oh, well, absolutely. I'll do my best." And I think that in any of these areas where I try and, again, I'm fortunate that I grew up with parents that valued education, and I went through school and I was able to do that with that support, and not everyone has that. So for me, it's just trying to give back with my skill set as much as I can, because I can't possibly sit there with a bereaved family and help counsel them through all of that. But I can be in the background trying to deal with some of the financial areas and raise money so that these sorts of services can be provided. So Lionheart, we set up in 2015. And so we've been around now for we're getting up to our 10 years. And the number of families that we support is amazing. And as an example, there was down at Safety Bay Senior High School a few years ago, there was, I think it was 4 children in years 7, 8, 9 that died by suicide. And that just, again, it hits your core in terms of the age group. So year 7, so they're 11 to 12, 7, so they're just babies, and to die by suicide is horrible. So as an example, Lionheart, we were contacted by the local government to run a program through that school, and we got some support from a local foundation to be able to run that program. Some of you may have heard, I think it was late last year, Newman College had a school excursion down south in Margaret River, and they were doing some abseiling, and the instructor fell to their death. And there was children in the cave, at the top of the cave, and also in the wider trip that were all impacted by that. And a colleague, his daughter was there. I think she was at the top of the rope, and he reached out and said, "Oh, this has all happened." And I said, "Right, I think Lionheart can help." And I spoke to the deputy principal, and 2 days later we had people in the school able to help and guide the family member or the parents of the children as to how to try and deal with it, and all of those sorts of things. So it doesn't matter how someone's died, there's been a bereavement, and that support is required. So the fact that it's such a vital area, it's really a no-brainer to try and help out as much as possible. A couple of other things I'm involved in is with Anglicare. So I'm on their Winter Appeal Committee, which is really about shaking the tin as much as you can. The Winter Appeal Committee really aims to raise money to provide for people who are homeless, and whether that's through their Foyer Oxford program, which some of you might be aware of. There is a facility on Oxford Street in Leederville where a lot of people who were homeless now have somewhere they can call, and it's for young people they call home, which means they've got that safety that comes with having a roof over your head. And that predictability, so they can go to university and get a job, and really that step up in life from that perspective. And of course, Anglicare itself provides a wide range of other services, and particularly they do a lot to support women from a domestic violence perspective as well. The other areas I'm involved in is I went to St George's College when I went to UWA, and if you've got family members that are a little bit older and don't sleep well. So insomnia is a really big indicator of Alzheimer's later. So I look around the room and I think, like, your parents or grandparents, that if they don't sleep well, they can sign up for a free sleep study through the Alzheimer's Research Australia, where they can stay overnight and they can find out really good mechanisms to help them sleep that can potentially, again, ward off Alzheimer's. You know, there's so many things out there that you can do to try and assist from that perspective. So there's a couple of the charitable things that I do on a more regular basis, and a couple of other things just to be aware of in terms of where there is free support. So your toolkit, or the financial toolbox, I was involved with so the financial advisory industry has got two industry bodies that have since merged. It was the Financial Planning Association and the Association of Financial Advisors. And I was asked to be involved in an initiative to try and get can financial advisors, female financial advisors, try and help a lot of people out there that need financial advice but just can't afford it. And so we were introduced to the toolbox, and I knew a lady that was on the board, and so we were trying to increase awareness of that with the parliamentarians and things like that at the time, because again, it's all about funding. What your toolbox or your toolkit does is it is a free resource. Anyone can go on the internet and learn so much about just general finances, how to set up a bank account, what a credit card actually means, all of those sorts of things. What I encounter through various bits and pieces of work that I do, and this is where demographics, that it doesn't discriminate. So I do encounter a lot of women who are suffering financial abuse. So they might live in a very wealthy suburb in Perth, but they are suffering from financial abuse. They get the credit card that they use, but then all their transactions are scrutinised. They've got very little actual independence, and they're very disempowered because from that perspective. So it's really important that they can become aware of how they might be able to set up a bank account, and then perhaps how they can leave some of those abusive relationships. And that's where your toolkit is really of benefit. The other thing that I really like about it is if you're someone's at home and they're researching on there and they get detected, you just press exit and it takes you to the Bureau of Meteorology website. You're like, I'm just checking out the weather coming up. So, they've even thought of those sorts of things, which I think is really invaluable to just try and help people get out of those particular situations. Because what I do see is they had a credit card on their parents' account when they were younger. They and through perhaps university, they're not uneducated. They just have then moved into a relationship that might have ended up being then a marriage, where they're the secondary card holder to a spouse. And so again, they just don't have any of that independence. So I would always encourage all the females in my office and that I talk to always have their own bank account, and that is where their salary gets paid. Have a joint account with joint expenses, but make sure that you are actively moving your own money into that as agreed, but your salary gets paid into your own account so that you have that empowerment and that independence there, because that can be the difference between being able to leave a relationship or not. It's a really, really, I feel quite strongly about it, as you can probably appreciate. The number of people that can't leave because they do not have access to a bank account or to spare cash to be able to go out there. And cash isn't a thing anymore. It's really difficult to try and ferret away a bit of spare cash because it's all done. You just click your phone a couple of times and boom, you're spending the money. So that Your Toolkit, I think, is a phenomenal resource available to anyone you know. Just let them know that it is a free resource there. The other one organisation that I wanted to highlight is Luma. I was invited along to a breakfast on Tuesday morning because it is Women's Health Week, and they were talking all about menopause, which is always a delight to talk about, and everyone's sitting there doing this going, yeah, we're all feeling it. But they also provide, they've got women's health clinics. There's one in Joondalup and one in Northbridge, which are free to those who need it. And even if you can afford it, then obviously there is a gap payment, but they're doing all of the money that is generated goes back into providing those health services to women. And a big one also with their support is to women who have suffered domestic violence. So all of these, there's so many charitable organisations in Perth, obviously everywhere like that. It's cool to be at school, like that sort of stuff I think is phenomenal, like as an initiative. I would encourage you all to perhaps find that passion and where you can even help in the smallest of ways. It really does make a difference. Volunteering your time, I mean, your time is one of your most valuable assets. Volunteering that time is pretty amazing if you can do so, and your expertise, because it might, it's something there that you can assist with, really does make a difference. So that's sort of a little bit kind of about me. Back to my sort of first slide, I'll get my assistant Beaker to go back there. A couple of other things. So I'm also very lucky that my husband's a stay-at-home dad at the moment. So I've worked full-time since having both my children. He was able to take that time off as well. So, 2 little boys running around, they're pretty cute most of the time, not when they're sick, of course, or when they're being annoying, but they're like, love them to death. So I've been really lucky to have that support. And again, you build that village around you as much as possible, and the school communities are just phenomenal. So I feel like we're so lucky as a state that we do have those amazing communities coming through, it's the more you get involved in the school, the more you see how much everyone is there to just lift everyone up. And I would also, and it's a hard one to be vulnerable, but also to put your hand up and ask for help if you need it. It is very difficult to do so, but sometimes if you talk about it, it's a bit like it's not the done thing to talk about menopause or miscarriage or any of those sorts of things. But the second that you do talk about it, you then realise how many other people are either going through perimenopause at the same time, and you're like, oh, thank God, doing this sort of thing, or have had miscarriages. So I'm a person that had a miscarriage before my first son was born, and I remember telling my aunt about it, and she said, yeah, I had 3 before she had her children, but you never spoke about it. And so her children are now in their, like, one's about to turn 60 type thing. So back then it was certainly not something that people spoke about. Likewise, menopause, you don't talk about it. It's like, oh, that's just not the done thing. And if you speak to I spoke to my mum and I said, so Mum, when did you go through menopause? And she said, oh, to be honest, Gemma, I don't remember. you know, it was so long ago, or we didn't talk about it. So you didn't just chat to your girlfriends about how you were feeling about this and this. It wasn't on social media where you could easily search and read a whole bunch of articles about it. And so I feel like now we're so much more informed about these sorts of things, and it's really worthwhile embracing that. And also, if you share a bit about yourself, often you get people sharing things back in spades, and that becomes just so supportive from that perspective as well. So that's, I don't know if that's a message to come out of this. My big things that I say to people is, you know, learning and education is, you'll never stop learning. And if you embrace any opportunity that comes your way, like this one, which was Steve reaching out saying, oh, Gemma, would you mind speaking at this? And I was like, oh, okay. I don't know if I'm inspirational enough or anything like that, but I'm happy to really talk about these charitable things that I do, because I think they all are of, their organisations are all of value. Just say yes to all of those sorts of things, and then you get better and better at being able to stand up in front of lots of people and talk about all of these bits and pieces. It's you know, that would be what I would encourage, and you all will always be learning from that perspective. So hopefully that's of benefit, and I'm going to hand over now back to Claire to. Thank you.
Very well. I think we can all agree that Gemma is most certainly a very inspirational woman. You know, it's an amazing story, and what she gives out in her own free time. And while we've all got a good story to tell, or we've all got a story, we've also all got the ability to give. And I think it's important that we all give that. So I love that talk. So thank you, Gemma. You'd say that. There we go.
Thank you so much.
To you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Okay, you ready, Lara? Yes, deep breath, deep breath, deep breath. Yeah. So we may not be professional speakers, but we have important stories to share of how we face the challenges others may be facing now.
But it's a cat. That's all.
Sorry.
Speak.
We may not be famous, but we're extraordinary in our accomplishments in life and the lessons we've learned. We can provide practical advice and valuable support that may help others to succeed, to keep trying, to take more opportunities to be proud of themselves. Today I'm going to introduce Lara Kempton. Lara was born and raised in Perth, Western Australia. She began her career at the young age of 16 as a Girl Friday at the state agency on St George's Terrace. My PA said to me the other day, what's a Girl Friday? A Girl Friday was the girl that did everything. I remember when you were on reception, you made the coffee, you did whatever you needed to do, but you were an all-rounder. Lara gained valuable experience working for an independent real estate in Stuart Hill before moving into the building industry as a receptionist at J Corp, one of WA's largest companies. After 3 years, she transitioned into the surf fashion industry. That's why she's been so trendy. Okay? Working for the label Hot Tuna until the birth of her first child, Courtney, who's with us today. Lara dedicated herself to being a full-time mother until returned to the workforce in 2014 with Professionals Real Estate, where she worked for 4 years. Today, Lara is a proud mother of 3 adult children. They're here today as well. The doting grandmother, or Baba, as they love to call her, to 5.5 grandchildren. There's one in the other name there, who she loves to babysit several days a week. In her talk, Lara will share a glimpse into her life journey and the valuable lessons she has learned along the way, offering a heartfelt and inspiring perspective on balancing work, family and personal growth. Welcome, Lara. Thank
you. Really nice. Like hard.
With the embrace, it's a scary face.
Oh, goodness. I don't know if I'm going to follow on from Gemma, but I'll do my best. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lara Kempton, but you may know me as Shane's wife or the other person in all the selfies. And to be quite honest, I was quite happy to keep it that way. But here I am, totally out of my comfort zone, in front of 100 people talking about my life. I've attended 2 other inspirational women's events and heard the amazing life stories of Candice and Nicole. I remember thinking how brave they were and how nerve-wracking it must have been. And yep, I'm shitting myself. When I was initially asked to speak, my very first reaction was, hell no, absolutely not. I am not the public speaker in our family. What on earth would I have to say? And why would anyone want to listen to me? I've done nothing remarkable or extraordinary, and certainly nothing inspirational. But having Claire... There we are. Thanks, Blakely. But having Claire, Adrini and Shane all saying that I may have a relatable story to tell helped me to agree to speaking to you all here today. So, I'm 53 years old, just turned, been married for 32 years. We have 3 amazing children, our beautiful daughter Courtney and 2 very handsome sons, Jordan and Cooper. 3 amazing daughters-in-law and 2.5 lots of my life granddaughters, 1 on the way. I'm also blessed with a wonderful stepson and daughter-in-law and 3 beautiful grandchildren. So I'll just take you on a brief journey of my life, starting in the good old 1970s.
That's it.
Don't worry, it won't be as long as one of Shane's keynotes.
What? I can tell you.
I was born 21st of August 1971 and grew up in Balga with my mum, dad and 2 older sisters. I had a normal, loving childhood and we spent a lot of time with grandparents, aunties, uncles and cousins. I have wonderful memories growing up. There was always a lot of family events and everyone would be there. Lots of food, lots of conversation, lots of laughter and always lots of love.
Okay.
I'm so grateful for having the childhood that I did and for my amazing family. They all played a role in shaping me as a person into the woman, wife, mother and baba I am today. We all know it takes a village to raise a child, and my village was my extended family. I was also lucky enough in the 70s to have met my first lifelong friend. I met Danita when I was 5 in grade 1 primary school, and I'm really proud to say that we have been friends for 48 years. The 80s was a decade of major change for my family. In 1981, my dad was diagnosed with mesothelioma, which is a cancer caused by asbestos fibres getting into the lungs. When he was 20 years old, he had gone up to Whitney to work in the asbestos mine. Then, 20 years later, at the age of 40, he became ill and was diagnosed with this terrible disease. He passed away 6 months later, 2 months before my 10th birthday.
That's it.
That was an incredibly traumatic, life-changing event for us. We had lost our father and my mum had lost her husband. She was now faced with the daunting task of raising 3 children on her own.
Yeah. So,
And she did an amazing job.
yeah, straight. Him, that's like so.
3 years later, we were blessed with a wonderful new stepfather who bravely took on 3 new stepdaughters. Thankfully, he wasn't easily scared off, as raising 3 teenage daughters can be challenging to say the least. I certainly know at times that I tested both Mum and Arthur, but to their credit, I turned out okay. Sorry. He has always been a loving stepfather, grandfather and great-grandfather to all of us. At the age of 10 and then 13, I met my other 2 lifelong friends. We were together all the way through school and beyond. All four of us started clubbing at the ripe old age of 15. When a face full of 80s makeup, a pair of good court shoes, huge shoulder pads, and of course big 80s hair could get you into any 18+ venue without ID. We are all still very close, having been together through thick and thin and supporting each other through life's ups and downs. We may not see each other as often these days, as everyone has their own families and busy lives. But when we are together, it's like no time has passed, and out come the same old stories, reminiscing and remembering the good old days and the mischief we got up to. These women have been and will always be some of the most important people in my life. I really appreciate the value of true friendship, which has become even more apparent as the years have gone by. These relationships, like a good red wine, just get better and more valuable with age. The 90s was when everything happened in fairly quick succession. Shane and I met in 1990 when I was working for a home building company. He was working for our land surveyors and would drop off our plans to the front desk. I was one of 2 receptionists and would always be on smoko when he came in. Rose, the other receptionist, decided to play matchmaker and one day asked to swap breaks with me. I didn't know what her plan was at the time. I just remember seeing this cute guy getting out of his car, wearing his cowboy hat and sunnies, and thinking he looks just like James Dean. All the other young girls came out for a good old Perth too. Anyway, we met and the rest is history. Her plan worked. We were married in March 1992. Shane was 22 and I was 20. We were just babies. I always wanted to be a mother and have children young, and was ecstatic when we found out I was pregnant. We both decided that I wouldn't go back to work after our baby was born and would become a full-time mum. This was what we chose for our family. We knew it would be difficult financially, but we were determined to make it work. There is no right or wrong choice when it comes to raising children. We just all do the best we can. It was when I was about 8 months pregnant that Shane met his first boss and mentor, and he suggested that Shane should get into real estate. So he did. The following year, in August 1993, our baby girl Courtney was born. Shane was working really hard with long hours, which meant a lot of time away from Courtney and myself. Fortunately, we were living with my mum and stepfather at the time, and I always had a lot of help, which I needed being a first-time mum. We then moved into our own home in December, and our family life was good. Shane did extremely well in his new career and received the benefits of all his hard work. However, we were immature and not savvy when it came to money. We spent beyond our means and ended up in financial difficulty. Eventually, we had to make the decision to go bankrupt, a decision that was not taken lightly, but was our only option. So Shane was told by his boss that he needed to get some discipline, and he told him, go join the army. So he did. This all happened very quickly. We declared bankruptcy on the 5th of May, and Shane joined the army the 10th of May 1995. I know I certainly didn't really consider how much this decision would affect us, and just looked at it as being a new adventure and living in a new place. So Courtney and I moved back in with my parents, and Shane left for Wagga Wagga, New South Wales for 12 weeks of basic training. I found the separation very difficult, as we'd never been apart. Even though I may have been struggling, I didn't want Shane to have any distractions. His sole focus had to be getting through those 12 weeks. So I did my best to keep any worries I had from him. We wrote letters to each other all the time. No emails back then. And this helped me to feel closer to him. Shane was on a training wage of $19,000 a year, which even back then wasn't very much. He kept a small amount for himself, I paid board to my parents and had some for everyday living. We also managed to save a little bit so Courtney and I could go to Wagga for Shane's march out parade and graduation. But it was still another 3 months before we could be together, as he had specialist training in Albury Wodonga. In the November, Shane returned to Perth and we had our going away party, which, as you can expect, was very emotional. Then, a few days later, the three of us all headed to our new life in Darwin. This was certainly a shock for me, as I had never lived away from home and my family before. I had underestimated, or was just totally naive about just how difficult it would be to uplift our whole lives, and how much permanently moving away from everything and everyone I had ever known would affect me. Even though this was a new start and a clean slate, the thought of being alone the majority of the time in a brand new place with our little girl was very overwhelming. The army weren't too flexible either, and Shane couldn't just come in late or finish work early because he had a wife and child at home. So the long days of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. was our life. Alone was our life. Shane really enjoyed being a soldier. It suited him. It gave him the structure and, more importantly, the discipline he needed, which he has brought into his civilian life. It also meant having to do what you're told, when you're told, without question. So if he was on roster to drive the duty vehicle for the weekend, this meant going to work Friday morning, staying on base the entire weekend, and not coming home until Monday evening after work. Doesn't matter about your family, army comes first. Shane was always away a lot, practising deployments. This was driving to different destinations like Kununurra in WA or Shoalwater Bay in Queensland by army vehicle for more training, and meant days, sometimes weeks, away from home. It wasn't long before our new adventure together had turned into extended periods of time at home alone for Courtney and myself. I did eventually start to make friends with other defence wives through attending the on-base playgroup, and really enjoyed being with them and their children for Courtney. We would also walk to each other's houses, as everyone lived on base, so the kids could play together, or to the pool for a swim. Spending time with these women, who were all in the same situation as me, was very important. We were all away from our homes and families, which can be very lonely. So we became each other's surrogate family.
Sweet.
Being with these new friends was so beneficial to my state of mind, and knowing that there was someone there for us when Shane was away was comforting. We got pregnant again. Obviously, we saw each other sometimes. In 1996. During my pregnancy, Shane was training for the SAS course. This was our way of getting posted back home, as the SAS is located in Perth. He was leaving home at 5 a.m. to train for 2 hours before work, training whenever possible during the day, and at least another hour after work, and not getting home till 7 p.m. or later. When we returned to Darwin, we were able to meet with the Salvation Army Padre and his wife, who gave emotional and practical support to defence families in times of need. They offered to look after Courtney when I went into hospital, and Shane would need to be with me. That was not something we were used to doing, and nothing we'd ever done before, leaving a little girl with people we didn't really even know. Thankfully, they were very kind, understanding, giving people, and this put our minds at ease. Our baby boy Jordan was born in February 1997 in Darwin, and as happy as I was to have this beautiful little baby, there was no family to share this moment. However, a week after I got home from hospital, I got a very welcome surprise. There was a knock at the door, and in walks my eldest sister with my baby niece in hand. I got the shock of my life standing there in my very attractive feeding bra. Shane knew I really needed some family around, and the two of them had arranged for her to come to Darwin. We spent the week together, which of course was wonderful, but when the time came, it was very difficult to say goodbye. I was dealing with post-pregnancy hormones and perhaps a little depression. We confided about this with the Army Padre, and he suggested that we try for a compassionate posting. Even though we knew that these were very difficult to get and not often approved, we were willing to try. I broke down crying during this interview. I couldn't help it, and I felt so stupid and embarrassed. But even with all the waterworks, our request was denied. Not that any of it was an act. That was our last-ditch effort, which had failed, and I now had to accept without doubt that we would be staying in Darwin for the foreseeable future. So I decided to put my big girl pants on, and I made a conscious decision to pull myself together and start dealing with the reality of my situation instead of fighting it and being a victim. This shift in my outlook and attitude helped me to finally settle and accept and start enjoying our life up there. It also helped me to feel less sad about what and who I was missing back home. And things did get better. So anyway, what do you do then? Get pregnant again. And Jordan was only 4 months old. We didn't have a TV, clearly. Let's just make life a little more interesting. Then a few months later, Shane was told by one of his senior officers that he had made a very good impression whilst on the SAS course, and that he was being offered a position back to Perth to work with the SAS. Go figure. Things were changing again. So in the January of 1998, with a 4-year-old, an 11-month-old, and being 7 months pregnant, I hopped on that Ansett flight quick as a flash back to Perth. Shay would stay in Darwin for the next couple of weeks to do the uplift and follow us home. Our second baby boy, Cooper, was born in March 1998, and our family was complete. However, army life remained the same. Shane had to attend various training and promotional courses over east, with a lot of time away, which again came with its challenges. Just one example was when Shane was attending back-to-back training exercises in Victoria. One night I started having serious back and stomach pain and needed to get myself to emergency. It was late and the kids were all sleeping. So at midnight I rang my mum and asked if she could come and stay with the kids so that I could get myself to the hospital. But my stepfather insisted that he take me, and he spent the entire 9 hours waiting with me in the emergency department. For the next few months, I continued having attacks, eventually having to have my gallbladder removed. Shane was away for the majority of this period, but thankfully we were back in Perth and I had my family there for me and the kids.
Yes.
Shane continued in the army for the next 2 years. Then in January 2000, he left the military to start off his real estate career again. I learned when things get tough and you are struggling, never be afraid or too proud to ask for help, especially when it comes to your mental health and emotional well-being. This help can come from anyone, friends, family, or support network. Just ask. I also learned that when you accept the way things are and change the way you look at it, things can change for the better. Or more accurately, you can change and choose to be happy. During the early 2000s, life really amped up. Shane was fully immersed in re-establishing his real estate career and striving towards business ownership, whilst I was bringing up 3 young children and everything that goes along with that. For a while, we only had 1 car and had to balance Shane's work appointments with school, playdates, doctor's appointments, etc. Life was crazy and, to be honest, a bit of a blur. It was during these years that, like a lot of couples, we were challenged in our relationship. I was busy with the kids and Shane with work. His career was taking off so quickly. He went from being a soldier to salesperson to business owner and CEO, all within 6 years. Sometimes I guess it felt like we were getting left behind. Where possible, I did attend work events with Shane, but predominantly we had separate social lives. As you all know, in real estate, we have a lot of events, especially hardports, which is always a great opportunity to get dressed up and have a good time. However, for me, back then, I didn't feel glamorous at all and was very self-conscious. As a result of having 3 children, I had put on a lot of weight and never really had the energy or the inclination to do anything about it, which led to a lot of body image insecurities. There were also some very questionable fashion choices. I had a high-flying, handsome husband who was attracting a lot of new people into his life, which I think definitely amplified my issues. Therefore, I withdrew a lot compared to nowadays. I was fully invested in my children's lives, reading stories to them at night, doing homework, attending school events, parent helping class, sports days, etc., which I absolutely loved. I didn't want to miss out on anything they did, and I was fortunate enough to be able to do this. Shane, on the other hand, missed out on a lot during these early years. I remember one night our youngest, Cooper, wanted his dad to read him a bedtime story. He did this, however, with a mobile phone attached to his ear. He certainly wasn't fully present. Please don't misunderstand. Shane was, and still is, an incredible father and husband. He was just so busy trying to provide and do the best for his family. So that was a wake-up call for both of us that something had to change. We made a decision to get back on the same page by communicating better, and to prioritise our family and relationship by having a shared vision for the future. We both decided that Shane would step away from the corporate world and go out on his own as a coach and speaker, which would give him more time with our family. It wasn't an overnight fix, and we still had our challenges, but we both knew what we wanted, and that was to be doing life together with our family, no matter what. During this time in my life, I found out just how important good communication is. Shane and I were so busy in our individual roles that we lost sight of our shared life and the reason we were doing all this. We needed to do more of the little things, like a phone call during the day, a lunch date here and there, and start investing more time back into our relationship and just enjoy being together again as a family. After 21 years, when the kids were all grown up and self-sufficient, I begrudgingly went back to work. In December 2013, Shane was offered the position of WA CEO for Professionals Real Estate. And in May the following year, there was an opening for a receptionist at head office. He offered me the position, trying to convince me with flattery like, "Oh, you have such a beautiful phone manner." I was not looking forward to this at all, as I'd never even written an email. I stopped working back in 1993 when we had Courtney, back in ancient times, when everything was old school. Handwritten messages, faxes, phones with cords, and the all-new mobile phone was the size of a house brick. It was a steep learning curve. I did learn a lot of new skills and met many new people. In fact, Shane's PA at the time, Di, is now one of my closest friends. Even though I protested in the beginning, I will always appreciate Shane offering me that job and grateful that I took it. Apart from being great travel and drinking buddies, Di and I play in a social netball team together. My daughter and daughter-in-law have also been a part of our team and will hopefully be returning after the birth of our next little granddaughter later this year. I have found being in this social and sometimes quite competitive team a lot of fun and something I really enjoy. Finding the courage to do something I didn't want to do or thought I couldn't do really was a confidence boost. I just needed that first little push. By returning to work, I learned that I was capable of much more than I thought. And another nice side effect was I found another wonderful friend. Yes, it's true, the early days were tough. Our house had second-hand furniture. We drove an old second-hand car. Our children sometimes wore hand-me-downs, and takeaway was a once-a-week treat. But we had everything we needed, and our kids never missed out on anything. And I have a lot of wonderful memories of our children growing up and wouldn't change one moment. Then when they grew up and started leaving home, I did feel a real sense of loss, as my whole life had been centred around them. Thankfully, they are the most amazing humans in the world. And are so good to their dear old mum and dad that they're never far away. Actually, they've all come back home at least once. Boomerang kids, I tell you. Our youngest, Cooper, and his new wife, Janine, are the ones that are with us now, saving for their first home. Anyone know a good agent? Our daughter, Courtney, and I are joined at the hip, and we see each other, or at least talk to each other, every day. Our son, Jordan, depending on his shift work roster, will ring either on his way to or from work to check in. And our youngest, Cooper, when he was living out of home, would ring me every day after work to say hi. It's a tricky. They are all the most loving. I can't see. Oh, God. They are all the most loving, caring, loyal, amazing individuals, and we are both so immensely proud of them. The wonderful relationship I have with our children now, as young adults, and even during those challenging teenage years, I believe, is a direct result of the quality time we spent together. You can only do what you can do, and we all have different lives, but it's all the little moments that count. Quality over quantity, and genuine interest in everything they do. Sorry. Oh dear. The love I have for Shane now is completely different and deeper than when we first met. We've grown up together over the last 34 years. It's the little things in our lives that are so fulfilling, like simply walking the dog together or grabbing a coffee at our local cafe, and especially at the end of the day when we sit down to watch our latest Netflix series. It's the best time of the day for both of us. We try to minimise negativity in our lives, replacing any negative self-talk with positive. In the early days, Shane would drive me insane with his positivity. You probably all heard that. For example, if I got shitty at the idiot who just about caused an accident by cutting me off, he'd say, well, perhaps they're just taking their sick child to the doctor. Something like that. It would get under my skin.
Yes.
But thankfully, this has rubbed off on me, and I've found that having a better outlook makes me feel lighter. We enjoy getting away camping, which has evolved from a swag, tent, camp trailer, and thankfully now a caravan. But the reason remains the same. That is to disconnect, get away from technology, apart from the selfies of course, and to enjoy just being together, having good conversations and plenty of laughter around a good campfire and the occasional competitive game of cards. We do have a smaller social network these days and have realised that it's okay to say no. We choose to spend our time with our children, family and close group of friends. Again, quality over quantity. Being with family and friends and surrounding ourselves with love is the key to life. So in summary, my life may not be the choice every woman would make, and that's okay because we're all different and amazing. Some may think I sacrificed my ambitions for Shane's career. I see it as being the only thing I ever wanted to do. Being a mother was my career choice. I've never seen it as a sacrifice. Life wasn't always easy or smooth sailing, and it often required hard work. But through these challenges came personal growth, and investing the effort into relationships that are most important to me is where I found lasting happiness.
Awesome.
To finish off, I'm going to share with you a very short story. So you can't go on a road trip with Shane without him putting an audiobook on. Sometimes I listen and the message resonates. One trip in particular, I remember this book called The Good Life, about one of the longest running studies on human happiness. The key message of the book is, the biggest indicator of a healthy and happy life after the age of 50 is not your cholesterol level, but rather the quality of the relationships of those closest to you in your life. Although my cholesterol may be a little high, I am so grateful for my life. I know that I have lived and hope to continue living my best life for a long time to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Lara. Well done.
No.